And if you click on that, it'll take you to My Educator. And just like we've done before, you got to download the file. And I think you still have to do an unblock on that file, right? If I go to the File Explorer, right click, Properties, unblock. I think I've changed it so that it works for all my files now that I download here. But if you need to, you might need to unblock your file. And then let's open that up real quick, see what that looks like, just so you know what to expect here. By the way, I changed the due date on this. I invite you to look at this before class starts on Wednesday. Um, just to come in heads up, but I put the deadline to be after class so we can handle any questions that you might have in class on the homework. But I invite you to look at it before you come to class on Wednesday. This is what it looks like. There's not much there. You're like, wait a minute. Remember to go to the Atlas tab and click on Instruction Sheet. And this is the instructions. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create an input box that asks the user to type in an email address. And you're simply going to say, okay, put email address colon in cell A1, put the email address itself into B1, and make sure you put this in the right place, is basically what it's saying. So if you go to your developer tab, Visual Basic, see how there's a solution module here? You want to make sure you're in that module. You want to make sure you are in this sub for the get email address, right? You're going to put in an input box here. You're going to erase this line or comment it out. This is where you're going to get the email address. That's the first part, right? That's that task number 1. Task number 2 is you're going to do some processing, just some relatively minor processing here. You're going to go to the process email address sub, which is this next sub down here, and you're going to put your code into that one for the following tasks. You're going to put this text into A2. So it's asking you to put A2, this particular text, right? Position of at with a colon there. You're going to put the ordinal position of the at symbol in B2. So for example, if this was the email address Cecil at BYU, Cecil was the former president at BYU Provo. The ordinal position of the at here is the 6th character, right? So you should see if you run your, and this could be an in-string function, right? In-string is the at symbol in this email address, and it should return to you the number 6 without the quotes. Put that number 6 into cell B2. Then the text username in cell A3, the text to the left of that in B3. So you're going to say, extract the first part of that email into B3. The text host name in A4, and then the text to the right of the @ sign in B4. So in this case, byu.edu. For this, you want to use the mid function. So this is one where you can use the mid function to extract that. Once you've done that, push the button labeled process email address on the assignment tab. So here's the buttons. These buttons call these procedures, right? It's kind of nice. Those buttons are already there for you. They will call these procedures to test your code, and then you can submit that. And be sure that all labels are written exactly as specified for full credit. So be sure to include all your colon there, everything inside the quotes there. Note, for this task, you may assume the user entered a properly formed email address. That is, you will not be marked down if your code has an error if the email address is entered incorrectly. Right, we're not error checking this thing. We're not saying, okay, you entered your email incorrectly, so try again. That's later. We'll do that later. For now, we're going to assume that the email is entered correctly. Okay. Questions on this? Okay. If there's no questions, then I kind of want to walk through this in the code. Can we do that? In a different scenario, a little bit different scenario, but you'll still be able to use it. You'll still be able to use it. Here's what I want to do. If everybody can go to Canvas, and there should be a link to this transactions file right here. See that transactions XLSM file? Unit 2, the third one down. Go ahead and download that. And we're going to do some transformations. We're going to do some in-string, some mids, some lefts. We're going to see if we can't begin to use some of this code that we've been learning here in these chapters. So let's see, I've downloaded it. Let me go ahead and open it up. Enable macros. Let me go ahead and close my homework file for now. And that should leave me, let's see, what's my book one? Oh, that's the other one I have. Let me close that one too. Okay, so you should have an Excel that looks like this. Is there anybody who having trouble downloading? Everybody there? We're good? You just unblock it? Okay, great. Okay, so here we have some data. Lots of different data. It's just names, phone numbers, address. Over to the right, we've got some other interesting data. I don't know if we'll get all the way over here. But it looks like cars, right? It looks like these are people and their cars. There's a card type, card number with an amount. Is this like a sales? Is that a sales amount for the car? Pontiac Sunbird for 7,000. Is that about right? Is that repair or is that a car? I don't think it does. There's a field for it. It turns out that the year is embedded in the VIN number. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. The VIN number of your car actually has an embedded year in there, which is actually pretty cool. I didn't know that. So we could extract that, right? So for example, if we went to, oh, what's it called? VIN number Wikipedia, and it tells you, where is it? It tells you where it's manufactured. Here's the year right here. So there's a year encoding. What is it? The 10th digit? So the 10th digit of your VIN is a 1-character code that talks about your year. It's pretty interesting. So if it was, interesting enough, they reuse the years, right? So if you have an A in the 10th digit, it was either 1980 or 2010. Kind of interesting. So I don't know if we'll get there with the time we have today, but we could extract that, right? We could extract the 10th digit here. We could look that up, and then we could put a year digit over here if we wanted to do that. Let's assume that this is some information that we get on a monthly basis, that we're trying to automate the splitting of this information. We're going to automate the split of first name, last name. We're going to reformat the phone. We're going to split out the address into these different fields. This is actually pretty common in companies that have multiple databases, right? That are using Salesforce for one database and then something else for their production database. And they have to transform this data to go from one database to another database. This is it's surprising how common this is actually. And this also gives us an opportunity to know how to figure out more practice with this. Okay, so when I pull this open in my VBA editor, here's what I've got. This is a sub here, convert data, and we've got one variable r as a long, and r equals 2. So we'll use this as our row counter, if you will. And then we actually have a loop here. We're going to talk about loops coming up pretty soon. Loops is the big difference in my mind between macro recording and the real power of VBA, because you can't do loops in a macro unless you do it yourself manually. You know what I mean? If you do it over and over and over again, then the macro will record that over and over again. But the real power, I think, of VBA is taking a macro, writing and putting loop around it, and then it will run multiple times with conditions, and that will allow you to save a whole bunch of time, right? So we haven't really gotten to loops yet, but I want to give you a little bit of a preview. And so let's just walk through this loop before we start splitting some of this data. So here's this loop. First, we have a do loop. So we're going to start do loop. And what this loop is we're going to do it until something is true. So that's how this do loop works, right? We're saying do this loop until this is true. And let's figure out what this is. So what do you think TXN is? Yes, we're looking at cells. This TXN prefix here is actually referring to the code of this sheet. Notice how our tab says transactions, but up here in the VBA project window, it says TXN. That's actually the code name. That's actually the name behind the sheet. This transactions is what we see. And the reason why it's helpful to reference the code name is because if I'm a user and I come in here and I change this name, even if it's just something small, right? If I've got it tied to the name of the tab, it's not going to find it. It's going to error out. But because I have this tied to TXN, which is the code name, this tab name doesn't really matter. It'll still track to that TXN. So then the question is, well, how do you change that? And if you click on your sheet up here in the project window, there is the properties window where you can change that, right? That's where you can rename that code name of the sheet. So the TXN is for the sheet. And we're saying, okay, there's certain cells in the sheet that I want to test the value for. So R is referring to 2. And so when I say row 2, column 1, what is the value of this right there? Any guesses? Close, close. We know that R is 2, so I have to put 2 in here. What does that give me? 48. Very good. You guys are good. This is saying second row, first cell value, right? Row, comma, cell. That's what that 48 is. So it's referring to row 2, column 1, 48. So what this is saying here is it's saying keep doing this loop until that cell is what? What is double quotes? Empty. Yeah, exactly. Until that cell's empty. So how long is this loop going to run? It's going to go all the way down. Exactly right. Why is it going to go all the way down? Because this R is going to increase every time we run it, right? So if I come back up here and I say, okay, now give me the third one, it's going to go down to the third one. Whoops, let's see. Copy and paste it, and then I hit my. So 3-1 goes to 91, and it's going to keep going. Does that make sense? So this loop here, the way this loop is set up, this line is saying do until that cell is blank. Okay, so what we do is what we have is a loop that's going to go all the way down this list. And let's see what happens. This is saying print the value. It's saying give me the row it's on and give me the value of that cell. So if I were to run this, what should it print? It should print the row, every row, right? Starting with 2, because we're going to start with row 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to go all the way down. And that's what this R is for. And then it's also going to say the value. But what it's going to be the value of? This time it's column 2. So it's going to do the names. It's going to do every name here. But it's going to print to where? Where's it going to print to? Debug.print is just going to print to the immediate window. That's all it's going to do. So this is a relatively, this loop doesn't do huge things to Excel. We're not doing anything other than just printing the row number and this column. So let's go ahead and run this. By the way, do events, that's something you add to a do loop to avoid getting stuck. If we were to take this, sometimes I've done this, it's painful. accidentally, you can run do loops and it will run forever. And there's no way to stop it except to kill your Excel. Again, this is pretty powerful stuff, right? VBA does exactly what you tell it, right? Unfortunately. But do events allows you to pause it and to break from the code running if you need to break from it. Does that make sense? It's just kind of a good standard practice to include do events in your loop to give it a pause. It says, okay, am I doing anything else? Otherwise, it will just keep running the loop over and over infinitely, and it will never stop. Now, this loop, it won't do that. Why? Because we've got this until, and so it's not going to do that here because this only goes down to row, what is that, 279? So once it gets down to 280, it's going to stop, which is good. But it's good habit just to have do events in there, especially when you're creating do loops. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to click inside my sub, and I'm just going to click on the play button, and I'm going to run it. And what do we expect to see? We should see everything up here. We should see every row printed and all those names printed. Ready, set, go. Boom, just like that. So we ran this sub, and here we have every row number and every first name, last name. Okay. Any questions on that? Check your neighbor. Neighbor, look, I did it. Tell your neighbor you did it. Neighbor, I did it. Run that code. Make sure that that loop works. Just run the loop. Yeah, you can. You can grab the bar and you can move it around if you want to. You can put it down here. You can put it up here. Personal preference. Whatever, however you want to. Please. Brother Juan? Juancito?
So the ABU, it starts in 81, then it goes all the way to 79. So what is that?
It starts in row. It starts in the immediate window. Yeah. So do you have the immediate window? If you go up to view,
Sorry.
sure.
Then the ones that are the number of rows.
Right. That's the row here. So when we did debug print, we were printing two things, right? R, and then we're printing the value. So whatever R is, that's what we're printing. That's a good question. Let's do this. That maybe that just it just did your. It may be that it just that's all that you can see. It may be that it just that's the limit of the immediate window. I think that's just the limit of the immediate window. I think it just overrode it in the immediate window. Does that make sense? Meaning I think it started at row 2, went all the way down, but all you see is row 81 down. Oh, you might have to close the file and reopen it. Oh. Where did
I've got the atlas thing pulled up, but it didn't show it.
where is it saved at? Is it saved in a OneDrive? That's right. Okay, so let's see. I'm recording this, right? Yes, I think I am. Oh, good. Let's start hashing this up. So what we want to do here is let's start with the first name, right? For the first name, last name. And let's see if we can use these functions that we've been learning in the chapters inside of our loop. So what we have here is we have a loop that's going to go all the way down, and that's good. So we don't have to worry about the loop. The loop's good. What we need to do is for each row, we need to split out this information. What I want to do here is I want to come up here and I want to type in a new variable, and let's do temp. And let's do a string. And that's just going to give me the ability to do the temp. Put this text right here into a temporary variable is all I'm doing there. I'm creating that variable. what we really want to do is we're trying to parse this name, right? We're trying to get into this name. Brandon, did it work yet? You got it? Great. That's right. I took out my stop. I had a stop in here, but the only changes I have now from the very beginning was I'm just adding that line right there. That's right. I also need to add, let's do a position number because we're going to do a lot of positions. So let me do a dim POS as integer. And that's going to give me the ability to look around that text, right? I want to know where my position is in my text.
That's a really quick question. I was gonna answer.
Okay, all right. Thank you for holding back. I'm okay with that. That's good. We like fun. Let's go ahead and create our temp value. So our temp value is going to be this name. What would I do here to create that first name? Cell B2, if you will. We know we're on row 2, so I can use the R row. Let's just do what we did up there with our debug.print. So I'll do txn cells. I'll do R. Why R? Because that tells us the row. And what's my column? Well, I'm going to do column B. So I'm going to do a 2 here, dot value. And just for kicks, right? If I do a stop right there, and if I run this, let me clear this out. Sorry, I commented it out. Let me run it again. If I do a stop there, I'm saying run the code until it stops right there. That's going to give me the option to come up here in the immediate window and say, okay, now if I do this, just to make sure I'm on the right track, I can copy and paste it. I can type it in. What is this value? Oh, look at that. Chilton, Brannon. Exactly what I wanted. So I know that this code right here is exactly what I need to put into that temp variable. Does that make sense?
I know.
Do you really?
Yeah, look at the great thumb.
Is that the one from Huntsville? I saw that. I was thinking about you when I saw that address. Do you really know him though? Oh, okay. I would. You never know. Okay, so now we've got the temp in there, and let's come down here and we have the value. So now we need to split it. So let's do this position. Let's figure out what am I going to look for? I'm going to look for, what can I look for? I'm going to look for something that splits the first name and the last name. And I'm going to do comma space, right? I'm going to do those 2 characters, comma space, as part of my in string. So here's my in string function. I'm going to start at the first character of temp, which is going to be the B, right? Because Brandon Chilton is the temp now. And I'm going to look for, there is a comma and a space in between these quotes, comma and a space. What is that going to return to me? Let's check. So I can copy this. I can come back up here. Whoops. I can do question mark temp. What is temp? Good. It's got temp. Question mark in string 1 temp with my comma space, right? And what's that going to return? It's going to return 8. What does that mean? It's the 8th character. What is the 8th character? The comma space. Yeah, the comma is basically that 8th character of that string. Okay. Question. Are you still running the are you still yeah, you will get an error if you stopped running or if it exited. So one of the reasons why this still works is because I hit this stop button here. I inserted a stop, and so the code ran till there. And now I can still use my immediate window, right? But if I don't stop it, it runs all the way through and the code is not still running. then yeah, it won't recognize temp because that sub's closed and gone, right? You do have stop. Is the yellow arrow there? Brandon, yeah, I'm still on row 2. Yeah. Got it? Okay, great. And if I get out or something like that, I can stop it up here. I can hit stop and I can hit F5 again and it will run and it'll stop there again. So the stop's pretty helpful when you're writing code because it helps you see, okay, this is what that value is. This is where I'm at with that value. Okay, great. Okay, so right now we have a temp, we have a position of the comma. So now let's see, what should we do now? Let's go put the first name, because we can get the first name now, right? Now that we know where the comma is, we can say, let's split that first name up and let's put the first name into that cell. So let's do TXN. We're going to refer to the TXN. And in this case, I'm going to do row R. And you can also reference the column by a letter. So in this case, C. And I'm going to say the value of that cell. Okay. So I'm saying, here's my sheet that I'm working on. Here's the cell that I want to fill. This is the row number. What's my R at this point? If I don't know, I can come back and test. I'm still on row 2. That's good. So 2C, basically I'm saying put it in row 2, column C. The value of that cell, I'm going to set that equal to, what am I going to set that equal to? I'm going to use my left, temp. How many do I want to go? 8, but I'm going to use my POS variable. But if I do 8, what does that give me? Let's try it. I'm going to click and drag my yellow arrow back up to that. And I'm going to run that, just that line with F8. And what do I see over here on the sheet? I got Brandon, but I also have the comma, right? So what I want to do here is I want to do POS minus 1. Does that make sense? The POS gave us the position of the comma, and now we're saying, okay, no, give me 1 less than the position. I want you to go back 1 position. And when I run that cell again, I'm going to click and drag. You can click and drag this yellow thing up and down, right? Wherever you want to start running. I'm just going to drag it right to that line. Hit F8 again. And there it is. So I've just inserted Brannon without the comma into that cell.
Oh, it works for that, but then it wouldn't work for the rest of the positions.
Good question. Is it going to work? Let's be crazy here. I'm going to comment out my stop. I still have my arrow on that. I'm going to hit F5 and we'll see what happens. Ready? Boom. Why did that work? Because it's looking for it. That's right. Every time we look at that row, does that make sense, Jordan? That's a great question, by the way. I'm glad you asked it. Every time we're looking for where is that comma, and it could be in a different spot. And so every row we change, every time we do that loop, it's going to say, okay, where's the comma? And take 1 less. Exactly. That's it. That's right. R equals R plus 1 is saying now go to the next row. That's exactly right. And do the whole thing over. So we just did this loop how many times? 279 times? 280 times? Something like that? You got it? Nice. Not sure how that happened, but sorry, we out of time? Oh, I apologize. I was just getting warmed up. Hey, if you need to go, go. Can I run through the email one real fast, just so it's on the recording, so I can have it on the recording, and then I can do some questions. But if you need to go, please go. I'll just do the email one real fast. Is that okay? Yeah, they're on the course media over here, right there. Yeah, no worries. Usually takes me a few hours to get them up, but they're there. Yeah, so let me just do the email one. You can probably see where we're going here with the last name, right? And the other fields here. The phone field has a couple of interesting spaces at the beginning. The street is a whole interesting one where you have two commas, right? How do you get that? And the zip, that's some interesting stuff. So let me walk through this email one, just so you can refer to this as you do your homework. Um, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to do a comment, email address parsing. I don't know what to call it. We'll call it that. That sounds good. And we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to do a temp. I'm going to set up very similar to what we did before. Cells. I'm referring to the cells on this sheet. Row is our row. It's always going to be the row. And then I want to reference G here, column G. And I'm going to put the value of that into this temp variable. That's all I'm doing here with this line. I'm grabbing this. Let me pull over to G here so you can see it. I'm grabbing, or it should be M, right? Yeah, I'm the wrong one. Should be M value. I'm going to grab from this M column and I'm just going to put it in temp so that I can manipulate it. Does that make sense? So this is going to be, I'm going to change this to M. Got the wrong one. And if I wanted to know what that was, what I can do is I can come here, I can unstop this, I can run this, it'll stop here. Let me go up to my immediate window. And I want to do, I just want to make sure that I'm in the right place, right? I'm just checking to make sure I got the right place here. Come up and copy and paste it. And there's the email. C Brandon 1B at eZine articles. Interesting. If you can see it, it looks like there are some spaces right here in front. Is there anything in the back? No, there's some spacing up front that we need to get rid of. We could do a trim. We could do something like that. For the purposes of the homework, what do we need to do? Let's see, where'd I go? So now that we have that in temp, we can do what? We can say, what did we just do before? We can do, if we needed to put it in N, I think we were just gonna, let's do this. Let's do TXN cells. We're still on row. Let's go to column N dot value is equal to, and then we're going to do our, let's say we just wanted to do our position of the @ sign. So how would we do that? We do our in string function. Sure, let's start at 1. What's the string we're going to search in? We're going to search in temp because we just put that into a variable. What are we going to search for? We're going to search for the @ sign. And that's going to return what? Is it? What is the return of the in string function? Let's try it. The position, that's right. Position of the @ sign. So that's what it's going to return in column N right there, the way we have that written so far. Does that make sense? If we wanted to do the left, what would we do here? What's my column O? For the in string, it's supposed to show a number. Yeah. For the homework, I'd have to go back. Is it saying, yeah, it's asking what position is that in, is the homework. That's part of the homework. If we were to do the left part of that, right? What would that look like? We could do cells n dot value equals, let me go to the next column, NO. We could do left. What would left do? Left of what? Of the temp. And then how long? 13. Ah, but we didn't do the POS down here, right? So we did the position up here, but we didn't do it down here. If I used POS here, what would happen? That's a little confusing. You see that? If I did this as it's written right now, we would take the position of the comma space from the name column as our distance here. What we really need to do here is we need to come down here and say, okay, let's do another POS. We're going to overwrite the old one and type in our position here with this string here. Does that make sense? The reason why we had this line is because we needed to put that number inside the cell. So I'll just keep it there. Let me just copy it. And in this case, we can run that value, that function again to get the position. Now that we have the POS for this column of the @ sign in the email address, which is column N, we can put that POS here. Notice how it still says 8. That's from the other one. We can put the POS here, and that will give us the position of the @ sign in the email. Does that make sense? So let me rerun this POS here, F8. Now the POS is 13. And now if I run this one, left 13, what's going to happen to my column O? It includes the first part. But again, we have the @ sign, so I need to do POS minus 1. And then that will get us just F8. That'll get us just the first part of that email. What do you think? Almost there? Can I give you one more? There's a lot there. The last one here, if I was going to do the right side of this email, what would I do? Let's do R comma MNOP. We're in column P. Good question. Would it? Really good question. That's the right place to start. Right. We're gonna take the right side of that email, but how far back do we go? Because when we go right, which way are we counting? No, it turns out the right, when we go from the right, we count from the right. It goes right to left. Yeah. So we're still going to be using the temp string. The length here is going to be the length of the temp minus let's see what that says. And this is going to be column P. Is that what we said? So I scroll this over. So if I run this one line, we're taking the right of this total email address, but we have to do the length. The total length is 30 minus where that position is, which is 13. Does that make sense? So what's 30 minus 13? 17. Yeah, very good. So we're saying going from right to left, what are the last 17 characters of that field? That's not that bad. Right to left. You could also use maybe the easier way to do that. Thanks, Jonathan. You could also use the mid here if you wanted to. What would be the mid way to do it? Let's do that too. Cells, in fact, that's a good point. Mid is probably easier than the way I just did it. How would you use the mid? Temp. Where are we going to start? Maybe at +1. And it turns out, see the length, see the square brackets around length are optional. So if you leave that blank, it's just going to take everything else. So if you leave the length blank, let's just run that one. Let's see, we have to delete this so you can see the difference, I guess. If we run that, it does the same thing. Is that easier? A little bit easier. Right. Right. If we left the +1 there, what would that? It would include the @ right? Because that's the @ Sure. But you could also do the mid, right? You could do a certain length if you're looking for like the middle part of the telephone or something like that. Or if we're looking at the VIN number and we want the 10th digit and we just want that 1/10th digit, right? We get that 1. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, can I do it for myself? Probably not.
Hey, little practice, little practice. Great. Okay, I think that's going to be helpful for the email address. Let's see, is there anything else on the homework that would be helpful here? We'll cover it in the class if you have some more homework questions about the homework. Yeah, I changed the due date to be the end of the day on Wednesday. So yeah, yeah.
We get this right. Or-
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, we're gonna do other stuff in class too. But that's always your choice, Parker. If you don't want to come, you never have to come to class. I shouldn't say that.